All right, everybody, we will get started. If you'll please have a seat. I am Sunithia Williams. I'm the Deputy County Administrator for Fairfield County. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. This is the public meeting on the proposed updates to the county's land management ordinance. Now, I do want to make one clarifying statement. I know there's been some confusion. I've gotten a couple of questions. This is not about a specific project or a specific property. I know that there's that rezoning that's hanging out there for the property on Gum Springs. That is going to Planning Commission later this month. This is just about the current design standards in Fairfield County and what we're trying to do right now to update those standards so that we can, if we get a new subdivision, that they can meet proper standards, that our current regulations are more up to date, they're more streamlined, that people know what they're asked to do, so there's a lot less confusion and everybody's kind of on the same playing field when they come here to do any kind of updates. So that's what tonight is about. We'll have a short presentation that'll just go over how we got started, where we are so far, what will be the next steps moving forward, and then we'll break up. We have sections that show you the current zoning, and you can ask questions over there. We have another section here where you can write your specific thoughts, comments, input that you want to give as we revise and update the ordinance. And then in the back, if you want to continue to be involved, if you want to be more involved in development in Fairfield County, the county has a Board of Zoning Appeals and a Planning Commission. And we have information back there about how you can serve, the time limits, the time commitment associated with that. We have some vacant spots right now, and so that we want to get people more involved. And so if you would like to know more about that, that's the station in the back. And so now I will turn it over to our consultants with the Stewart Group who have been helping us as we've gone through this process.
Thanks. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jake Petrosky with Stewart, and this is Jennifer Ganser, and we have a short presentation, and then we'll do a quick Q&A and then break up into stations.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer, as Jake said. Right now we're at the beginning phases of this project. So we call it project initiation. Beginning phases, we're doing research. We're holding a meeting like this to get public input on potential updates, potential changes to the land management ordinance for Fairfield County. The land management ordinance is just covering the unincorporated areas of Fairfield County. So this does not cover incorporated Winsboro, Blythewood, Ridgeway, etc. Those areas have their own zoning ordinance. And so if you live in one of those areas, you can contact the officials and staff at those municipalities to get more information. This is just about unincorporated Fairfield County. So next steps, the rest of the summer and in the fall, we're going to be going over ordinance revisions. That's stuff that Stewart will be doing in-house to update the ordinance, and we'll be working with staff on that. And then the adoption. This does need to go before the county board for final consideration, so that will be the last step. Yeah. Oh. Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Try to maybe
Should I just yell and not talk in the mic?
Is it better if we talk right in?
Oh, jeez.
Let's do that.
All right. No, thank you. If it happens again, just do something crazy, and I'll adjust. Okay. All right. So basically what you missed, this is for unincorporated Fairfield County, not for the municipalities like Blythewood, Ridgeway, etc. So let's go with the project schedule that's up on the screen. So right now we're in the first phase, project initiation. We have two other phases, ordinance revisions and adoption. But right now, we're doing research, and by we, I mean Stewart. We're doing research in the office. We're communicating with county staff. We have this public meeting. We had a stakeholders meeting last month, and we're going to be having another public meeting in the future. So there'll be another chance to give comments. So this is an update to the land management ordinance. this is like the zoning ordinance, if you're familiar with that term. So staff at Stewart is going to be working to make the ordinance simpler, to reorganize the ordinance, to make it to be easier to understand. So a zoning ordinance does things like it will tell you, what can I build on my property? Can this property have residential on it? Can this property have commercial, industrial? It gives requirements such as how tall the building can be, where the building can be placed on the property. Is landscaping required? How many parking spaces do I need? So that's what this ordinance is telling us, and that's what we're going to be reviewing. This is a copy of the zoning map for Fairfield County. We have one copy at that table. So if you want to see it closer up, I suggest you go to that table, check it out. All right, and then these are the items that Stewart is going to be reviewing with county staff, and where we could also take your consideration and your input in. So we're going to be looking at the current zoning districts that are in the county. We're going to be looking if any of those should be consolidated, if there's some redundancies. We're going to be looking at the table of uses. So this is a table that says, what can happen in the county? Where can I open a restaurant? Where can I build a single family home? Where can I build a manufacturing plant? So we're going to look at these uses to determine, are there missing uses? Are there redundant uses? Are the uses in the right zoning district? We're going to be looking at the standards and requirements such as setbacks, again, height, landscaping. So trying to assist county staff in making sure that the development that comes to the county has a good set of standards and a good set of requirements that it needs to follow. And with that,
let me get used to this then. So just elaborating on the district regulations, these districts establish regulations for all the different zoning districts, and you can kind of see the distribution of the districts in that chart there. You have a lot that's in that RD1 category, you have a lot in the RD, and then you have some residential districts, R1 and R2. You also see a good bit of B2, which are business or commercial districts, and then the industrial district. We're going to review all those districts, just like Jennifer said, and get into what's permitted or conditional uses allowed in those. What are the parking requirements? What are the dimensional requirements? Dimensional requirements are like setbacks. How far do I got to set back a building from the edge of the property line? What are lot sizes? What are lot widths? Minimum lot sizes? Those sorts of things that really dictate the form of development and what you can fit, how many homes you can fit on a property, and that sort of thing. There's some tables in there that really need to be simplified. And we're going to do that. We're going to add some clarity on a few things. There's a cluster subdivision option, which I'll talk about in a minute, that allows clustering development in order to save natural resources, but we need to add some clarity there. Moving parking right now, there's a table that has the permitted uses and parking. We're going to create a separate table for parking to make it a little bit clearer. There's some overlay districts. There's one that really is just over some major highways on either side of the major highway, really trying to improve the design of development along some of those highways like 34. And it really needs to be looked at and clarified as to what we're trying to accomplish, because right now it's in 34 and 321 and a couple other roads. We're also going to look at potential notification requirements for some rezonings so that where there is a major rezoning in your area, adjacent property owners would be notified. Parking is something we're going to look at. Article 6 addresses parking. We're going to update Article 6, but there's also some parking information in Article 2 we're going to move over. We're going to create a table of off-street parking requirements for different uses, And then we're also going to look at minimum parking standards. This is something that really hasn't been looked at in this ordinance in a long time. And in some cases, parking standards might be a little low. In some cases, parking standards that are required might be a little high. We've found this out in other places. We don't really want to require too much parking because if it's not going to get used, then that generates more stormwater runoff, and it's also not a really valuable asset to have as a parking lot that's not really being used. We'd much rather have that in green space or in buildings that are have a lot higher tax value. So we're going to look at those minimum parking standards and kind of evaluate those as part of this process. The land development regulations in Article 7 really are about subdivision, the process of subdividing property. And it also addresses site design standards. And there's two major types of subdivisions that are allowed as conventional development or conservation subdivisions. Those conservation subdivisions, again, cluster development away from natural resources, but in exchange for that, they provide some flexibility on lot size and that sort of thing. So we're going to clarify that a little bit, update it based on best practices, update some graphics, and also review some procedures for some infrastructure and that sort of thing that happens during the land development process. Make sure that the roadway standards and that sort of thing are up to date. There's Article 8 that is general and ancillary regulations. It talks about setbacks and accessory buildings. It really needs to be looked at and simplified and reorganized a bit to emphasize what the important parts of that are. Definitions. This is the back part of the ordinance that just defines all the terms in the ordinance, and this is something that we need to update. There's some land uses that aren't defined in there to make it clearer for applicants, but also clearer for staff and planning commission and the county board to understand, okay, how do we define this use and where is it allowed and that sort of thing. A couple things that aren't in there yet, breweries aren't in there, some outdoor storage and short-term rentals aren't in there. So there's some kind of new uses that could happen in the county that we need to clarify so that we can include them in the table of permitted uses. There's another article on conditional uses. So these are uses that are allowed with supplemental standards. So an example of this is, well, you can do this, but you have to have an additional buffer, or you have to do a fence to screen the use from a public right-of-way or adjacent existing development, that sort of thing. And so that's something that we'll look at. We're also going to look at home occupation standards, look at special events, temporary events, and see how those are working or need to be updated. The one thing that I'll mention is you all do have a draft comprehensive plan. The county is required to do a comprehensive plan. This is kind of a long-range planning document that looks at 10 or 20 years out. And it makes land use recommendations for the county. We do have more information on that in this board over here. If you want to read more about it, it should be available on the website if it's not soon. But it makes some recommendations about the overall land use pattern in the county. And it also makes some recommendations about zoning and how the zoning code should be updated. So we're going to look to that and incorporate some of those recommendations. A couple of things it talks about is encouraging development in certain places of the county, like near major roads and commercial centers where sewer infrastructure is or may be available. Also, it talks about the need to reduce conflicts with incompatible uses around residential land uses. It also makes some recommendations on that overlay district that I mentioned. Really talks about breaking up into a scenic byway overlay and then a gateway corridor overlay that goes on NC 30 or South Carolina 34 between I-77 and Winnsboro. And how to create kind of a parkway atmosphere there and accommodate development, but make sure it keeps the gateway looking nice into Winnsboro. It also talks about promoting infill and redevelopment and evaluating mixed use and our allowances for mix of uses in one zoning district. So that's where you could have some commercial uses and also some homes or some residential uses on the same development. So that's just a quick overview. Again, kind of where we've been. We had some stakeholder meetings. This is the public information session number 1. What we really want you all to do is view the different boards and give us feedback on your priorities, your ideas, your concerns related to zoning and land development in Fairfield County. A couple different ways for you to do that. There is a large map over here of the existing zoning in place right now. So if you have a comment that is about your area, that you would like to see more things in certain places, or you're concerned about some form of development, then just put a sticky note and put it, where you're concerned about. If it's more a big picture issue and it's not necessarily tied to a particular place, come over here and just write your comment either on the flip chart or on a sticky and put it on the board. We want you to ask questions. We want you to talk to us and then also county staff about your concerns and your ideas, and just share your opinion. So that's kind of what we're going to move into as that part of the meeting tonight. And then after this, we're going to take y'all's comments and other feedback we've gathered from staff and stakeholders and revise portions of the ordinance. And then the next time that we'll come back is the next public meeting and share with y'all what we're recommending changing or some options and that sort of thing. So that's kind of the process. We're close with staff, and then it would get adopted eventually. But that's kind of what the next steps are. We'll pause here and have a brief kind of Q&A, just big picture stuff, and then we do want to get into more detailed conversations and questions at the different stations. So, yes.
I just want to know what your company's background is and what other areas you have dealt with.
So Stewart is a consultant firm that has offices in Columbia and Charlotte and Raleigh. And we do planning, city and county planning. We help local governments with ordinances and comprehensive plans, land use plans, that sort of thing. We've worked in Lexington and Fountain Inn and down at the coast and kind of throughout the Carolinas doing this sort of thing. So
And you dealt with how many rural areas?
many rural areas, yeah. And
What did you make on?
well, I've worked in parts of Richland County that are quite rural. I've worked in a lot of North Carolina counties, Franklin County and Henderson County, and mountains and coastal counties too. Georgetown County, we're working in Georgetown, and if you go west of the Waukesha Neck, it's really rural. So I got a lot of experience. I'm really passionate about kind of rural areas and protecting rural character. So that's something we'll try to do as well.
Have you heard of Whitewood, South Carolina?
Yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha.
That would be a great example.
Perfect. Yeah. Give me some specifics over here about like what you would like to do differently too. Yeah.
I think you mentioned the gateway and the highway, and I was with that group that was going and we got kind of kicked out of 34, and that to me, as a historian, that's one of the main important cultural avenues to get between the two towns between I-77.
Mm-hmm.
So there was concern when we read this industrial development program.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd like to talk with you more on detail about the specific history of the corridor and how we can recognize that. Do you have questions? Someone over here had one?
I'm not sure, I can't hear very well. I
Okay.
know echo.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is about the land incorporated into Fairfield?
This is just the area that's in an unincorporated area of Fairfield County, and yes, the land use regulations that apply to that area. Mm-hmm.
And for the purpose
updating the land management ordinance, which functions as your zoning ordinance. No, the county's trying to be proactive, and the reason why the county is doing this is they realize that the zoning ordinance, land management ordinance, hasn't been updated. So land regulations haven't been updated in quite some time, at least 10 years, if not some parts even before that. And they realize, what's happening in Blythewood and Columbia and even north of here, and there's a lot of growth pressures coming down 77, industrial growth and residential growth, and they just want to be proactive and make sure that the land management ordinance is kind of up to date and anticipates what's coming. And I think that growth it can be good, but we want to make sure it's done the right way. Okay.
Or will those properties have to go through a rezoning, the normal rezoning?
We haven't decided whether there's going to be map changes or not. There could be some consolidation of districts, especially, and some changes, but that would be something that we would present and propose at the next meeting, and kind of there would be a notification process, and we would have to have there's going to be a public hearing process as part of this update. So that would have to happen anyway. That public hearing process would have to happen anyway. So we would be, really transparent about whatever's going on there.
So it would be pointed out what changes are made.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, her question was, will there be any zoning map changes as part of this process? And we don't know that yet. There could be some consolidation or creation of a new district or some changes to districts, but we're just not there yet. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. You are employed by Stewart, that is a development firm.
No, we are a planning and engineer design firm, yeah.
Are you employed by Fairfield County?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're our client.
And you have no personal interest in the particular Gulf Springs project yourself?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. I didn't know about it until Carter told me earlier. So, yeah.
Y'all had meetings in August.
Mm-hmm.
In August, stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
Who picked the stakeholders and
We do have a summary of those that will be provided, will be public, and we can go through who was on it. But it was a number of different groups, representative of different parts of the community. So, there was some, pastors, there was government officials, there was folks from economic development, there was a lot of different groups available. But yeah.
different people represent their area. I mean,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I say 7 or whatever.
Yep.
People at Lake Water.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know who's making decisions.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
Yep. Great.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Lynchboro and Fairfield County, but specifically, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure I'm not the only one here.
Yep.
To feel like we're losing control of some of our areas
Mm-hmm.
because we're not, who's the second?
Yeah. That's fine. Yeah. I mean, all that's public. All that's public. We have a spreadsheet, and and we took notes and main themes that came out of it and all that. So yeah. Those will be on the website. I think we're still working on the finishing touches on editing because we had 3 sets of notes and putting them together. But that's all public.
So will it be within 2 days?
Yeah, I would say 2 weeks. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Along with all this stuff. So the presentation, I think they recorded it. These boards will also be available on the website as well. That sort of thing. The county has a website devoted to the planning department, and there's a section on that website related to the land management ordinance update. And I think it's on that board over there if you want to write it down. All right. Another cue?
Seems to me that y'all are part of a nothing to do with Fairfield County. And what exactly are y'all supposed to do?
So we're just hired to help the county out with this. I mean, putting together, this meeting, putting together all the maps and looking at the ordinance and updating the best practices. That's a lot of work. I mean, it's something that staff has to do in addition to all their everyday stuff, processing permits and preparing for, existing meetings and stuff like that. So they just need some extra hands. So that's what we are. We're extra hands to kind of help out.
Is this because of all the rumors going around about all these developments? One particular area is being looked at right now as being
No, they started doing this update probably about 6 or 8 months ago. So that they decided to update the ordinance, probably a year ago. So this was beginning before any of the recent kind of development proposals. They planned on doing this for probably like a year or maybe over a year. What's that? Yeah. They plan on doing it for about a year, probably.